Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about the micro lesson. Does policy matter? Does health policy matter? What is health policy? Well, chapter 13 in our book refers to health policy. And for some of you, once we've gotten through all the other chapters and learned about how our system has evolved and how we've become the United States healthcare system that we are, you might wonder, how do things change? And policy basically is defined as any decisions that are made remember those three branches from elementary school of our government: legislative, presidential, and judicial? Well, decisions are made in all of those branches, and all those decisions have bearing on how we practice medicine in the United States. We also have regulations. One real eye opener for me later in my career was all those laws get changed, and that's wonderful. But where the real meat is when they actually write the regulations. And regulations are the rules that are based on the laws that basically are enforced by people that are charged with enforcing the law. So the way those regulations get written is also heavily influenced by interest groups and people. Well, people hope to influence that to their benefit. And then finally, allocations are a way that policies matter. And allocations are simply how much money is attached to whatever that policy is. I mean, you can have the most wonderful policy in the world, but if there's no money attached to it, it's probably not going to happen. In the United States, we have several health interest groups, and it's impossible to list them all, but the big ones are the American Medical Association, the American Hospital Association. We've learned about those in some of our chapters. The American Association of Retired Persons has a lot of influence because they represent pretty much at least a significant proportion of all people that are retired. We have the employer groups, large groups of employers. Group Health of the Puget Sound is a famous one up in Seattle area that had a lot of influence on health policy. And then we have consumer groups, so Consumer Reports or other groups of people that come together. And then we have something that you'll hear, an alliance. Okay, alliance is when you have a couple of these groups come together, and those alliances change depending on the policy issues. So you might have one issue where the doctors may be in a different position than the hospitals. Okay, so they may try to lobby Congress in different ways, but then sometimes they'll have an alliance. They'll say, you know what, we all want there to be more financing for healthcare. Okay, so they might get on the same boat for that one. Uh, what do health policy, what's an example of a health policy? Well, basically anything. Think about Medicare. Medicare did not exist until 1964, 1965, right? So people passed laws, and during that time period, there were a lot of people who didn't want it. Okay, just like people didn't want the Affordable Care Act, or some people still don't want the Affordable Care Act. It's important to note when Medicare was passed, there were people who thought this was us just becoming communist. We're going to give health insurance to everyone, and these people they should work for their health insurance. And then there are people who said, you know what, people work hard in this country, and pretty much every other country in the world takes care of their elders, and we don't. I'm not saying either side is right or wrong, but these issues were once policies, and now it's hard for us to think of healthcare without Medicare. I mean, hospitals lose their Medicare provider rights, and they go out of business because Medicare influences up to 50% and more of some hospitals' bottom line. So, but that was once a policy. So, the Affordable Care Act began as a policy. Other critical issues you hear about: access to care, providers, the funding of provider education, the funding of Jefferson College, receives money probably from the federal government in some way, shape, or form. Financing, elderly, access to minority groups, smoking issues, costs, quality, research, all of these things receive a great amount of either federal, state, or local money. And there are groups, I guarantee you, that are out there representing each one of those. So does policy matter? You bet it does. And it may matter to you more and more as you go forward. And you may find yourself sitting in front of a policy maker, a legislator, or a judge, or even the president someday. And I hope that you'll draw on everything that you've learned and everything that you've experienced to help make our healthcare better in the United States.